going on, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of JaAR. JaAR, for those of you that may be new, stands for Joe
and Amy
Review. This is our weekly show where we review the Magic stories. And this week we are here to review 2 episodes of the main story for Strixhaven, episodes 3 and 4, Extracurriculars and Put to the Test, both by Adana Washington. Before we start and before we give our quick review, just a quick reminder, if you're watching this and you're not subscribed, please feel free to do so. If you're unaware that that's something you can do, yes, also ring the bell. Super helpful. We stream twice a week. If you're into Magic, we stream MTG Arena on Mondays, and we stream random video games on Fridays, but this week...
which is always fun.
Yes. This week we are continuing our Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi series with 2, and so we would love it if you would join us for those as well. But yeah, it just gets you, keeps you up to date on stuff. I guess we can say, since this is our longest running series, we can celebrate a little bit. We reached this past week the milestone of 500 subscribers. So thank you all so very much. It's an absolute honor for us. We really do appreciate each and every one of you who is already subscribed. If you're subscribing after the fact, keep it up. That's amazing. We'll get to our next milestone before you know it, so we really, really appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you.
Thank you.
And so, on to my quick review at the beginning. I want to say that I didn't love these stories as much as it seemed like you did, and we'll get to Amy's quick review in a minute. I didn't love story 3, episode 3. I didn't mind episode 4. I think that I had problems with both, but I think that there were good parts to episode 4 that outweighed some of my issues with it, whereas episode 3, I feel like I was a little bit more bogged down by the issues, and so I didn't love it as much. What about you?
Yeah, I thought the stories were good, but that's kind of it.
Well, and allow me to clarify for a moment. I think they're well written. I think the content is poor.
Okay.
So, anyway, we give our quick reviews at the top so that if it's something that you feel that you want to go read for yourself before watching our review, we encourage you to do so. Yes. Because as we always say, we review, we don't summarize on the show. So, and we would love it if you would join in the conversation because, hey, if I have a controversial opinion, like I don't like these and you end up enjoying them, I want to hear your feedback. I want to hear your opinions on why I'm wrong or why you disagree with me at least. And we can continue that conversation in the comments with me and your fellow viewers as well. And us and your fellow viewers.
Yeah, and if we can take each one of these somewhat simple stories and, you know, twist them and get really deep with them and rip them apart and analyze them until we're, you know, I don't know, really tired of doing so, you know, all the better.
Yeah.
Because that's what I love to do. That's why I do this show.
Yeah. So, yeah, this was... So, anyway, so if you want to read those stories, feel free to go to the top 2 links in the description down below. Will take you to these 2 stories. They're labeled as such, episode 3, episode 4. So you can go check those out for yourself. And like I said, join in the conversation in the comments down below. But onto the full reviews themselves. We'll try to go somewhat in order, episode 3 first, then episode 4. But if things come up that bridge, we'll talk about those as well. First of all, I actually liked in episode 3 that we meet Quintorius. I wrote later on, but we'll talk about it here because why the hell not? With Quintorius being added here, and with the side story that we reviewed, one of the 2 side stories that we reviewed last week, so if you missed last week's video, go check that out up in the top corner there. You can click and watch that for our reviews of episodes 1 and 2 of the side stories. But with Professor Onyx being at the tail end of that second side story that we reviewed, episode 2, or side story number 2, and Quintorius being here, it really seems like what the side stories used to be was looks at legendary creatures that are in the set and on the plane, but aren't involved in the main story. Mm-hmm. And with Dina's story last week ending with Professor Onyx getting the book that Dina had, and Quintorius being in this story this week, it feels like this is the most overlap that we've had of like side story characters, because spoilers, I guess, but side story number 3 is about Quintorius, but that it's the most overlap with side story characters in the main story or vice versa that we've gotten in any of these side stories. even including, even though it's not exactly the same, but including Ravnica Allegiance and Guilds of Ravnica side stories from Nikki Drayden that we got, which were amazing, and I think, maybe I'm wrong, but I think are what spurred Wizards on to want to write these side stories more, because they saw what an outpouring of support Nikki Drayden's stories got back at a period of time when the story team was not getting a lot of love, so...
The story team?
You know what I mean.
Yeah.
There was also, Quintorius was the one who mentioned There's Always a Spell, which is something that came up again. I wrote down, too, at the beginning of this story when I saw There's Always a Spell, I wrote, There's Always a Spell is almost certainly a lesson that will be used later, and sure enough, it came up literally in the next story, episode 4. But also, I said, you know, I know you have points on this, so please feel free, but I also wrote that is a good piece of advice for authors who are writing in a fantasy setting where magic is present, is that if you have a problem that you're not sure how to solve, don't forget, there's always a spell. So, yes, go right ahead. I know you had thoughts on that as well.
I thought that was a cool point.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was a little weird when Will was so close to Quintorius, and they were studying, and Quintorius seemed to know a lot about this assignment somewhat that Professor Onyx had given. And I was just like, is he, like, in the class with Professor Onyx? Because... And why even is Will, honestly?
It's a good... Well, I don't assume that just because Professor Onyx is a Silver Quill professor, that she only teaches... Because that would imply that, like, all of the Prismari students are only taught by 2 people. They're only taught by Uvilda and Nasari.
Makes sense.
You know? Even though that...
I just assumed that there were more professors. It's just that we didn't get to know who they were.
Oh, I see. That's an interesting point. Yeah, because those are only the deans that I'm referring to, and Professor Onyx is clearly not a dean. So, but then maybe that's why. Maybe Professor Onyx is a professor, and so she teaches anybody, as opposed to the deans who teach exclusively in their schools. Maybe. I don't actually know. And that is, interestingly, one thing that either we forgot or I don't think we learned from the Planeswalker's Guide, which, again, we reviewed that a little while ago. I don't know if I'm going to have an iCard for that one, but you can check. But that we learned about a lot in that helped us out a lot with, like they talk about the snarl in episode 4. If you have no idea what the snarl is, you'd have no idea what's going on. It's mentioned in the Planeswalker's Guide, but since the Planeswalker's Guide isn't on the story page, if somebody goes to your story page and tries to read your story, we'll get to that later in this story as well, but like, it's so frustrating.
It is. It really is. Yeah, I mean...
Sorry, I cut you off.
I just thought it was weird, like, Quintorius seemed to know marginally about this assignment, but not enough to help Will actually with the assignment.
Yeah.
Will was doing the assignment. Quintorius made the comment that there's always a spell, and then Professor Onyx later was the person who said the same line again.
But
so I was like, is that like a motto of the school? Is it that Quintorius and Will are in Professor Onyx's class together, and it's something that Professor Onyx always says? Like, I wish they had kind of, like, explained a little bit why I'm seeing these, like, loose threads.
Sure.
And I don't know how they connect.
Sure.
But I know that somehow some of them do. I just wish I knew how they did.
Then we should talk about Liliana, since we're talking about Professor Onyx. Let's talk about Liliana in this one. You and I differed slightly in our feelings in terms of Liliana's meeting with the twins in her office. I felt like it was a very clear beginning to manipulation with Liliana, which, ironically, if people have watched our videos for a while, typically you are the one that calls that out and notices it. And I was feeling it more so than you were this time around. But let me explain myself a bit, and then feel free to, we'll go into that discussion. Liliana brings the twins into her office. She mentions, she's warning them about the Arik at one point. I mean, she's telling them, like, not to fight, right? And because there are bigger threats coming, and she knows that she's going to need their help. She determined that a while ago. We read that in the earlier stories, episodes 1 and 2, somewhere in there. And we know that, or she slips in where she mentions that the Arik are, like, not the strongest things on this plane or something, or that, no, that the school is not the strongest collection of, or only collection of strong magic on this plane. And tosses that in there. And Will intelligently notices that she said plane. Right. Which the people of Arcavios are not going to call Arcavios a plane. They're just going to call it their home world or the world. Right? Because that's all they know exists. They don't know that planes are a thing. So Will now knows that Professor Onyx is a planeswalker, which may endear him further to her, or may make him kind of more inherently trust in her abilities, her strength, her power, whatever.
But also perhaps mistrust her more, because he might think that she's got ulterior motives, which you're in this case saying that she is.
Right. Well, because because again, we heard Liliana talk about that with them, but then so she slips in that plane comment, hoping maybe that they'll catch it on it and be more endeared towards her. And then they say, "Hey, the Arik are here. They're dangerous. You got to be aware of them. You got to be afraid of them." And that's that further manipulation of, like, come on, be aware of it, be afraid, like, this is a problem. And I just feel like that was her being like, okay, so you're going to help me now, right? Like, even though they're students. Like, they're planeswalkers, sure, but they're students at the same time. So they don't... It's not their job to have to do that, and it's just, again, it seemed manipulative where Liliana, once again, needed help with something that was beyond her. Now, it very well may be in this way for a more altruistic purpose, because it's like, listen, lots of people could die. Like, these guys are trying to take over or do something terrible. We'll find out in episode 4, at least to a degree. But these guys are trying to do this, and I'm going to need some help. And my point was, as well, that it seemed like, at least from the earlier stories, to me, that the other professors or deans or whoever were not taking it as seriously. They kind of brushed it off as whatever, especially when... I wrote it here, but I'm not gonna remember. I don't remember where it is specifically. But that Rowan says, well, if this was really happening, the professors would do something, right?
Which I kind of laughed at.
Yeah, and
I didn't even really agree with you that they weren't listening. I still think that they're not listening to Liliana say this because this is something that they already are aware of and, like, are possibly going to plan to do something about. And they're just more discreet about it than Liliana is.
Right. Although, when the mage hunters attack, that's clearly not true.
Yeah.
Because, and again, that's not me saying, like, you were wrong, it's just... That's absolutely how it could have been read. Either way, I totally get that. And that still doesn't mean that this manipulation comment of mine is absolutely true either. But it does show that Lily was trying to get the twins on her side because she felt like she was all alone in this. And again, when the Mage Hunters / Auric attack, all of these deans are, like, running everywhere and, like, trying to gather all the students together and protect them. And students are, like, dying left and right. Because the deans are not up to snuff, right? They're not ready for this kind of an attack. And I was saying to you, kind of when we were talking about this earlier, right? Just like any powerful mage, they're going to do what they can, right? You still saw Dean Kian shooting that fractal blast and summoning other fractals and, like, killing things. But she's also going, who's that? What's going on over there? Like, she has no idea what's happening.
Right.
So she doesn't know that they're Auric agents necessarily, or at least she doesn't know that, like, this is what Professor Onyx was warning them about the whole time.
I mean, if we come to the point where the kids are talking and saying, it's the Auric, they're here.
Sure.
So that means that the professors also knew it was the Auric.
Sure. They understand the concept, yeah, but...
Well, and said, they're here.
Right.
Which lends you to think that they had some cognizance of the fact that they were coming in the first place. Regardless of knowing when, or knowing what to expect when they arrive.
Yeah.
But they had some kind of cognizance of who the Arik were and that they were coming.
Right.
At some point. So, yeah.
Okay, so do you want to talk about the manipulation at all?
Well, you can.
Or did you do that already?
Well, you can talk about how you feel it was manipulation.
Right.
If you feel like you didn't really do.
No,
that
I think
yet.
I did. I thought I stated what I was stating, but
Because to me it didn't really seem like manipulation.
Sure.
And maybe that's just because I don't feel like in the prior stories they truly established a real motivation for Liliana to want very badly to fight the Arik.
okay.
So I wasn't sitting there going, oh my god, she's freaking out and doesn't know what to do. Like, she knows they're coming and, she wants to save the school, Like, I didn't get that sense.
Sure.
So, like, if that were the case, then I could see more of a motivation for her to manipulate them.
Sure.
To say, like, look, I desperately need your help, or to not say that,
Right.
but say it to herself so
Right.
that she knows, like, I have to manipulate them to do this task for me because they seem pretty powerful. They're planeswalkers, and I need as much help as I can
Right,
get.
and again, like, make them think it's their idea to help her when
Right.
she's the one sitting there going, well, there's this and this and this, but, I don't know what you two could possibly do,
Right.
and then have them come up with, like, well, we could help you. Anyway, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yeah, but I mean, it didn't feel like a super manipulation. It just kind of felt like she was right.
Right.
She was just like saying, like, look, if you guys are always at each other's throats, you're gonna be more vulnerable to the shit that is inevitably going down.
Right.
So I'm letting you know of the shit that's inevitably going down, and that you probably shouldn't be at each other's throats, because if you work together, it's gonna help you in the long run.
Right.
I don't also see a motivation for her to really do that either.
Sure.
Every motivation that Liliana has, from a characterization standpoint, is a selfish one. And I didn't see real motivations for her in this story. And I also didn't see, like, you mentioned the other dialogue that happened in that conversation, and I didn't see that those were manipulative things either. It just seemed like they were thrown in there to be like, I honestly don't even know the reason, and yeah, I'll let you talk about it.
Okay. So there really was, like, there was a moment as well. I agree this part isn't, it doesn't feel like manipulation to me, but it feels like, there was a moment where Liliana talks about fighting between a brother and a sister.
Right.
And I was like, okay, I get it. I see the line you're drawing. I do. But also, no.
Right.
It doesn't work. It doesn't endear her more to us in the audience because we're sitting there going, oh no, her brother. No.
Yeah. Like,
No.
maybe if
Not to me.
Yeah,
Like-
maybe like if you rewound to, a point where that had just happened to her, and that was kind of all that had just happened to her, then fine. I can have sympathy for that,
Right.
but I can't at this point with everything that she's done.
Yeah.
Fuck her.
I agree with that. And so...
So it really just seemed like they threw it in to be like, see, she's cool. She's helping these guys. She's a teacher. She's taking care of them.
Right.
She's asking for their help.
Right.
And she's telling them not to fight.
Right.
And the reason is because she loves her brother. No. None of that is true.
Right.
None of it.
And so while...
If Liliana is Liliana, if the characterization is in any way correct, that's not those aren't motivations of hers ever.
Right.
They're just not.
Right. So let's talk a bit about some of my problems that I have with this first story, right? I mentioned that I don't love it. It's not great.
Yeah.
So let's talk about some of those problems.
Okay.
We have a Kazmina moment in this first story, episode 3 that we're talking about today. I was very frustrated by this because, again, and look, I'm okay with having a conspiracy theory of mine be wrong. Don't get me wrong. Totally okay with it. I surmised in either episode 1 or 2, whichever it was, where we had the first story of Kazmina dealing with her owls and looking through her owls specifically at Luca joining up with the Auric. I surmised that Kazmina was going to be behind it in some way, or at least part of it in some way. Instead, we get her confronted by Luca, or Luca coming up to confront her. They get into a fight. Notably pretty cool. Like, that was a cool moment of the two of them fighting. But they seemed like they knew, like, Luca seemed like he knew her.
Yeah.
He came up to her specifically, knew it was her owl, knew they were fake birds, right? Calls her out on it. How, like, I guess I will preface by saying, because this is relevant as well, because another problem that I have with this story, but we'll get to it. I will reference that I have not yet read, and I do still plan to at some point, but who the hell knows when, but I have still not yet read the Ikoria story. So it is possible that in the Ikoria story there's some type of a meetup there, although Kazmina wasn't in the set, so I don't imagine that she was involved with Luca in one way or another, but again, I don't know because I haven't read it.
But they may have explained more about Luca so that you could have, like, understood, like, how powerful he is, like, or whatever, to, like, be able to recognize the birds or, you know, whatever.
Whatever. But to, like, and I guess maybe to, like, because he's so controlled with animals, or in tune with animals,
right.
Maybe that's how he's able to, like, look up at the owl and be like, well, that's not an owl because I can't sense it to be able to bond with it.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
And maybe it's bonded with you, Kazmina, so I know now, hey, who the hell are you? Why are you sending these fake birds? I have no idea.
Right.
I really don't. But
they don't go into it. Like, there's a lot of things that they just, like, brush by a little bit, and they don't do it in a way where it, like, builds anticipation. It's just confusing.
But herein lies my frustration. Not so much with why I don't understand their relationship, because that's one thing, and that's somewhat fine. What I don't appreciate is the fact that she planeswalks away at the end of their confrontation because she sees the mage hunters and the Auric coming. Okay, makes perfect sense. She's going to get out of Dodge. She's not the best person in the world. Sure, whatever. She's not staying to defend the school. She's just going to run away. Okay. But my suspicion, and maybe I'm proven wrong when the 5th story comes out, or it's spoilers, it's out now at the time that we're filming this and at the time that you're watching this. So feel free to go read that and wait for our review of it in 2 weeks, because next week is side stories 3 and 4. And then hopefully, if they're all out on time, we'll be able to do main story 5 and side story 5. Fingers crossed, that's our plan. But that's in 2 weeks, so. But maybe in main story 5 she comes back in some capacity. But if not, because that's my belief is that she won't. And if she doesn't, my frustration is we know nothing about her at all.
Still.
We know that she has fake birds or owls, and she can see through them, and that she knows the twins or has a relationship with the twins, and she is known by Luca in some capacity. What does any of it mean? Now, you may say, because this is a perfectly fine way of writing a long, ongoing story, because they did it with Vorinclex, right? Vorinclex comes in at the end of Kaldheim, shows up, does something terrible, and then F's off.
Right.
And now we're gonna, what's going on with the Phyrexians? What's happening? It's a big mystery. We're gonna have to stay tuned to find out. That I understand. So maybe I'm making a poor comparison here, and again, I'd love people's opinions on this. But my feeling is, I already had a set where Kazmina showed up, did absolutely nothing, and we learned nothing about her, and yet she was a new planeswalker that was shown to us.
Right.
That was War of the Spark. You've she's now back. A ton of people are like, yes, Kasmina's back. We get to find out more about her, right?
And then...
Because it's all returning Planeswalkers. Liliana, the twins, Luca, and Kasmina. It's all returning Planeswalkers. Yep. But Kasmina is the only one we know nothing about. Well, guess what? If she doesn't come back in Story 5, she will continue to be a Planeswalker we know nothing about. That is frustrating to me. And again, maybe you disagree. Maybe you're like, look, Joe, it's a long-running thing. They're just going to keep throwing mystery after mystery. Okay. Maybe. I disagree, but maybe. Like, and again, I still want to hear that opinion. I still want to hear from you if you're of that mindset. Because just because I disagree with you doesn't mean that you don't get to put your opinions down, or just because you disagree with me, right?
You know, support it.
Sure.
As they would say in school.
Sure. Well, and I'm yeah, that's appropriate. But I'm giving my reasoning and my opinion behind it as well, so I want to hear yours. But that's why I say it just feels like it's like, who is she? Why? How does she have these relationships with these other Planeswalkers? And at this point, why do I care anymore?
Exactly.
Because
it seems so convenient every time. But never for a purpose.
We just talked about the fact that Luca and the twins, right? I mean, the twins were in the twins were in Throne of Eldraine, and Luca was in Ikoria, and Kasmina was in War of the Spark, and arguably so was Liliana, and they're all back here pretty quickly after the last time that we saw them.
Right.
All of them. So, do we want Kasmina again? Like, you've kind of written yourself into needing to explain what the hell's going on with her, or, because to be honest, here's my opinion. If she is gone for like 2 years, and then she shows up in a set again, I don't care.
Nope.
I just don't care at that point. Like, it's not gonna, again, you're not gonna get me again with, ooh, Kasmina, maybe we'll learn something. Nope. You lost that trust already. You did, and that's, again, that's just my feeling on it. But
like, maybe we'll go to her plane that she's from, and because she's not from the planes that we have seen her on.
We don't technically know if she's from Strixhaven or not, but she's definitely not from Ravnica.
Yeah.
And that's the only other plane we've seen her on.
Anyway, maybe the whole reason why we keep seeing her is because they're like, hey, here's a new person. Hope you kind of like her, because very soon we're going to go to her home plane and you're going to learn all about her, and she's going to be real cool and you're going to love her.
Again, I'm just looking at the next 3 sets that we know are coming out.
Yeah.
The D&D world, which is a core set, so I'm sure that there's not planeswalkers in it. And then 2 sets on Innistrad.
Right.
I don't think she belongs on Innistrad. They can prove me wrong, right? That's just off the top of my head. I don't see, Kasmina showing up on Innistrad and being impactful there, although maybe that's where we learn more about her. I highly doubt it, and I don't want that. But it feels like if it's not that, then we're already partway into 2022, and
right, and then we're already to a point where we just don't care.
Yeah. So we'll see. I'm, again, as always, as with really anything, I'm willing to be proven wrong. It's just a frustration that I have with it at this point. And again, any contrary opinions, any similar opinions, leave them in the comments. That's what we want to hear from all of you about.
Yes, we hope we're wrong. I mean, yeah, we hope we're wrong. So we're hoping that right after, or I'm hoping that right after, and I don't know what you're doing, but right after Innistrad,
Who does anyway?
We'll go to Kasmina's plane. We'll learn all about her, and we'll say, that was sure cool. We're so glad you showed us her ahead of time so we could, see that she was cool, and now we really know that she's cool, or whatever.
Yeah.
But, I'm also not holding my breath for that.
Right.
Because, we know all too well that that's not something we can do.
Yeah. So, I mentioned the Ikoria story. So let's talk about, and I mentioned the Planeswalkers all being from recent sets, so let's talk about the twins, and let's talk about the Wildered Quest. Because we haven't reviewed it on this channel yet. Maybe someday we will. I'd like to. We're about maybe 3/4 of the way through the story, maybe a little bit more. But still, we're about 3/4 of the way through the story. and we keep stopping to do all these, and we're doing that other Battle for Zendikar Oath of the Gatewatch series that will be coming back when this set is done. So don't worry, JaAR won't be going away when we're done with Strixhaven stories. We will be back. But, because we still have to finish that series, and we're looking forward to it.
And we're sorry it has to be so broken up and random, but, you know, we don't get notified ahead of time when stories are coming, so we kind of have to pull it out of our ass when we do the scheduling for things. And, you know, we're doing the Oath of the Gatewatch Battle for Zendikar stuff because the Return to Zendikar set came out or whatever, and so, you know, we decided to try to be flavorful that way.
Yeah. So check that out if you haven't seen that as well.
Yeah.
There's a lot of videos in that already, and we're going to add a lot more, but because there's like 31 stories or something to be reviewed, it's a lot.
Maybe we'll ultimately like do playlists or something where we're like not breaking up, like even though the dates are such.
We already have a playlist of of all this stuff.
No, I'm not talking about all of these episodes.
I understand.
I'm talking about putting it in the correct order.
Sure. We have
not in order of date.
Well, we have a JaAR playlist. Then we have the Battle for Zendikar Oath of the Gatewatch playlist. Then we have the Strixhaven playlist. We have the Call Time playlist.
Okay, good. So then more Battle for Zendikar stuff gets done and it'll go into that playlist?
Correct. Okay. Now the JaAR playlist is going to be jumbled as hell because it's just in order of JaARs that we've released. Right. But the actual playlists for the story reviews for the individual sets are, they're there. But yes, let's talk about...
I know that and I'm happy with it. So
you're welcome. Lots of work on YouTube. Lots of stuff to do.
I love you.
I love you too. Let's talk about the Wildered Quest.
Okay.
This story brought up the Wildered Quest...
too many times.
Not by name, but a lot.
Right.
And
or
again...
information that you needed to know from it.
And again, maybe as someone who hasn't read the Wildered Quest...
Entirely.
Maybe you'll... No. I mean, people that are not us.
Oh.
That someone who has not read it at all barely knows that it exists. Because you can absolutely have those fans. The whole point is this is a new story team. A fully new story team at this point. Sure, you're referencing old stories, but you're referencing old stories that people had to pay for.
Right. These
are free again. And they haven't been online like this for a fair bit of time. And obviously I'm not referring to the last set and the set before it. I'm talking about before that. Before Zendikar Rising and forward, right? They weren't free online before that since the last time they were free online. Right. And so you have a new story team. We argued, and it's the pinned video on our channel, so if you're not subscribed, you should be, but you'll see that video of the interview that we did with our friend Dave for War of the Spark, where we surmised that that book, even though it was the finale of a massive story arc, kind of a long story of our opinion there, but go check out that video. Maybe it's up there. I'm just making more work for myself. Anyway, that it's possible that that book was written for newer readers to the story.
Right.
And if that's the case, then that's a new draw that you have to newer readers. And then sure, Wildered Quest came out after that, the Ikoria story came out after that, but also then you have these stories going back online for free. So now people who don't have to buy your ebooks anymore can now go and read your stories for free online. Isn't that arguably a new reader base?
Right.
Or couldn't that attract a new reader base?
Or the same old people that perhaps just can't afford to buy stories.
Or
so they're going back to the free stories because now they exist and they're reading them and going, oh, well, I don't understand any of this stuff that's happening here because I missed so many stories because I couldn't afford to pay for them.
Or who were upset by the fact that War of the Spark and or War of the Spark Forsaken were garbage. And so they were like, well, I'm not paying for any more of your crap because I paid for a full novel and then a second novel, and all you did was spit in my face, and then you didn't give us Theros stories, and then you put in the Wildered Quest as an ebook, which is super cheap, although that's my opinion. I can completely understand if people still find that amount of money oppressive, and there's nothing to be ashamed of that.
And still really annoying to try and get though.
Yeah, I agree with that. Absolutely. Yeah, because we had to like download special software on our computer because we weren't planning on reading that huge book on our phones. And that's no offense to people who want to do that too, but like it's just like it was a pain in the ass to like find the right software, download it, then we have to download the book after we've already paid for it, like whatever. Anyway, so the references to the Wilder Quest here really make it seem like you're missing something. And I don't think it's the kind of thing where, oh, I'm missing something, maybe there's another story I should go read, because there's no reference to it.
Right.
There's not. If you want, maybe reference the fact that other book exists. Maybe make a phrase that they say clickable in your story.
Yeah.
And if it's clickable, it takes you to the page that will sell you that book. Why wouldn't you do that? That makes sense to me. I mean, look,
because
maybe that's...
they have no marketing skills.
Well, I was going to say, but maybe people would find that pandering, right? Maybe people, or not pandering, but like a sell-out-y type thing. Like
Perhaps, but they don't have to buy it in that situation.
Sure. I agree. Yeah, and they don't have to, like, if they click on it, they're like, oh, it's to a book if I want to learn more. Okay. But that just makes, I don't know, that makes sense to me. That's just...
It makes perfect sense.
Well, thank you. I like that.
But again,
Appreciate
this
that.
company doesn't know that. They don't have the right people who come up with these things that seem to us like it's common sense or just slightly good business acumen. They just don't have that.
Yeah.
They don't have it.
Yeah. Okay. Then we can talk about one last thing, because you didn't want to talk about this anymore?
No.
Okay, so that's fine. But why don't you talk about this then?
Oh, yeah, I was a little confused about, like, the timeline, because...
For episode 3.
Right. Because they kind of, like, they tell you about, the conversation between Professor Onyx and the twins. And then you see it happen. You see the Arik do their thing. But you really have no actual sense of the period of time that occurs between those two events.
Right, because Will takes it upon himself to, like, go to the library and read up on stuff, and...
But he said he was going to do that.
No, absolutely.
So
right.
it all could have happened in one fucking day,
Right.
for all we know.
It could have been a day, it could have been a couple of days, it could have been weeks.
Yeah, it could have been 3 months.
Right. And it's a little tough to tell. I agree with you that it was a little hazy in there, because you don't know. You don't know the period between Liliana warning them after that Mage Tower match, and then Will's in the library and... Oh, okay. Let's... I don't want to cut off what we're talking about, but is that...
Yeah,
is that a good...
I'm fine with that.
Okay. Let's talk about tropes. Let's talk about tropes. Because I have a couple of things I want to talk about with tropes.
Yeah, I feel like you have more than a couple.
Well, maybe I'll tone it down. Maybe I won't.
Do whatever you like.
So, in this story, and look, tropes are not a bad thing necessarily. They're not. They're not inherently bad. It's just, I find myself, if I'm reading a trope and I'm like, wow, that really works here, I'll compliment it. I'm pretty sure I did it last week or the week before. But when I read a trope and I roll my eyes, because I'm like, ugh, we all know where this is going.
Again.
And that's 100% what happened here with me with the twins. Oh no, the twins are upset with each other. One of them yelled at the other one and then they walked away. And now Will hasn't seen her in a while. I wonder what's going to happen. I bet they'll make up just in time for the big fight at the end. That is tiresome.
Yeah.
That one bothered the crap out of me. And it really spoiled this story for me. That's why I didn't really enjoy this one. It's like, ew. You did two things. One, that has happened in a billion stories, a billion movies, a billion TV shows. Like every episode of a sitcom ever is like two characters arguing, being upset with each other, and then they make up in the end so that they can learn some kind of a lesson, right? It happens every time. It happens all the time.
Well, they're at school. They need to learn a lesson.
And not only that, but one of the big ones that stood out to me in terms of examples of that occurring.
None of the lesson cards are about that, I guess. But.
They are definitely not. But one of the instances of that happening that stood out to me was Harry Potter and Ron Weasley. It happened to the two of them, and then they get back together as friends later in the book and or movie. Like, you know,
and then Casmina's owl says, "I am not an owl."
And I will agree. There are some people online. Nobody was saying it in our comments, but you're more than welcome to do so. That actually, I don't want to say nobody, but there were people talking about this online as well, who were saying that the lines that can be drawn to Harry Potter are not egregious. They're not. And even this, I would say, is not egregious. It's not. Because again, it's everything has that type of a story. So the fact that it's in Harry Potter just means that Harry Potter used the same trope, right? That's not me saying like, oh, it's another connection to Harry Potter. It's not. It's really not.
Another connection to every story ever.
Every story. It's so many stories. And so that soured me so fast to this story where I'm like, ew, get your stupid like twin conflict. They're gonna make up by the end of it. You just know they are. So don't bother putting it in there. There's no need for that conflict. There just isn't. It just frustrated me. Like, maybe you did, again, if you disagree, I want to hear from you. I truly do. Because to me, it's just tired. It's just tiresome. Like, that particular trope, right? Again, if I see a trope and I think it works well for the story, I've said so. Like I said, last week or the week before, I'm relatively certain. But it was definitely in the Strixhaven stories. But this one I was not okay with. And maybe that makes me a little bit hypocritical, where it's like, Joe, if you're okay with a trope, you're okay with all of them. I don't agree with that, but I would love to hear if you do. Like,
I didn't have a problem with it as much. And maybe that's just because when the characters that we're dealing with are the twins and Liliana, I think my expectations for it being a good story are just a lot lower. I feel like they're pretty static characters. I hate Liliana. The twins, I just feel like don't have a lot of character development. Other than, I mean, they had the Eldraine stories, sure, but...
so we know like a bit about their family background and etc.
Yeah, but like, we don't know a lot about their personalities.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we haven't really gotten to see who they are. We know where they came from, and we know a little bit about like the structure of the plane that they lived on, and that they're the royal kids and they have like these responsibilities that they don't necessarily love having or whatever.
Well, and what a surprise, the red mage is a hothead and the blue mage is a brainiac.
Yeah. Shocking.
We've never seen that before.
Shocking.
Nice. Nicely done. That was good. I like that. Yeah, more of that.
So, there you go. I didn't expect a whole hell of a lot from a story where most of the characters were the two twins and Liliana.
Sure.
I mean, like, Luca was in there and Casmina barely. So yeah, like, I didn't expect all this depth. You know, I didn't expect it to relate back to the like trauma theme that a lot of the other stories relate to. Like, I just didn't really expect that out of this. And so when I didn't get that, I wasn't disappointed. I just, got what I expected.
All right. And then last but not least for this first story, another like issue, and again, whether you consider this a minor one or a big one, when we reviewed Kaldheim, and you can go back and check out our playlist of our review of Kaldheim. It should be right on the front page of our channel, whether you're subscribed or not. Please subscribe. But because it helps us out a lot, and ringing the bell helps you out a lot as well. But for Kaldheim stories, the last review that we did, we talked about the fact that Vorinclex, you remembered his name a lot better than I did earlier, but Vorinclex
Yes.
was present, and there was the story spotlight card, Kaya's Onslaught, with Kaya on Vorinclex's back, attacking him with 2 daggers, which she didn't have for very long in the story. She had the axes towards the end, because the daggers were destroyed or lost or whatever it was. I don't exactly recall at this moment. But it has her attacking Vorinclex. And in the bottom left-hand corner, because that's what they do with these cards, it said Story Spotlight.
Which was a big fat lie.
It never happened. Just straight up never happened.
Right.
Kaya never met Vorinclex. Vorinclex never met Kaya. Kaya, at the time where she would have met Vorinclex, didn't have her daggers. None of it happened.
Right.
At all.
And it's not as if that was a card that people hardly ever saw. When we were playing Arena, we saw that card all the time.
Well, yeah, and it's an uncommon,
because
but it's very good.
It's a great card.
Yeah, it's very good, yeah.
Everybody wants that card
Yeah.
when they're playing Call Time because it wins fucking games.
It's very good.
So, if you're gonna have that picture on that card and say it's a Story Spotlight card, I mean, that's just dumb if it's
Right.
if it's actually none of that even happens in the story.
And it passed by with very little complaints about it, and I feel like it should have been a much bigger deal, but it wasn't. But, that being said, I don't think that this is as egregious, but it is the second set in a row that it's been done. The first card, or the first art, I should say, for this particular story, episode 3, was for Explosive Welcome, which shows Will and Rowan standing in front of like a big colorful display. Based on the flavor text, it seems that it's like welcoming them to the Prismari college. And that was the first art in this story. Was it the first paragraph of this story? No. Was it within the first half of this story? No. Was it within the first at all of this story? No. Was it in any of the stories so far, episodes 1 through 4? No. And so, is it going to be in episode 5? I mean, I'd put good money on the fact that it's not. But, if you go look at the card, Explosive Welcome, 7 in a red. It's a sorcery, I believe. It's either a sorcery or an instant, but it's a spell.
Gorgeous art.
Yes, beautiful art. And a pretty cool card. I mean, it's expensive, but Prismari can deal with that if you have that kind of deck.
We have played with it.
Correct.
And it was nice when we got to actually play it.
It's pretty explosive. But
yeah,
it's very welcoming and explosive. But it says Story Spotlight in the bottom left-hand part of the card. Not on Arena, so maybe that's all they care about, is that, it doesn't say it on Arena, because Arena doesn't show Story Spotlight stuff, but paper form, that card says Story Spotlight on it. It's not in the story. Like I said, Amy and I were talking about this beforehand, before we started filming. That's not as bad to me, because it's just, hey, they were welcomed into Prismari, which is something that presumably happened at some point, and that's what it looked like. We didn't have to be told about it in this story. It's a story spotlight, I guess, because they want to spotlight the fact that if you're just looking at the cards, that the twins joined Prismari. Okay, sure. It's not as egregious as Call Time, where the fight between Kaya and Vorinclex never happened. Nope. Just never happened.
They didn't even meet.
Nope. Literally, she has never seen it, Vorinclex, and Vorinclex has never seen Kaya. Like, just never. And so that's not necessarily true. Vorinclex may have seen Kaya, like, when he was, like, hiding or slinking around or whatever. Kaya never saw Vorinclex at all. She never had an onslaught on Vorinclex at all. None of it. Not even close. This, less egregious, but still, you have a story spotlight card where you didn't spotlight it in your story.
Yeah.
So, I didn't love episode 3. I had a lot of problems with it. Episode 4, I had some issues with, and we'll talk about it, because I think I'm done with episode 3.
Yeah,
Cool? All right.
I think we've talked that one to death.
Fair. So on to episode 4, Put to the Test, again by Donna Washington. This one gets into it. And I appreciate that, because it's story 4 of 5, so, probably want to get into it.
Yeah.
And especially following, again, one that I did not enjoy, right? If this was week to week, and the way that we're filming these, it's not, but the way that it's being released, it is. If I had read episode 3 on week 3, and then had to wait another week for episode 4, I don't know that I still would have read it because we film these videos and I want to know what happens, but I don't know that I would have been excited to read episode 4. Even with the ending being what it was, and that was pretty climactic, but because episode 3 was such a wet blanket, it really was like, okay. But I go into episode 4 and I was very pleasantly surprised. I enjoyed the fight sequences. I enjoyed the way that was written. And so again, Adana Washington, great job, because it's not about me disliking the writing style, it's about the content. And most of that, from what we understand, is not Adana's fault. She wrote very well in terms of, or I should say they. I'm not certain of Adana's gender, so I do apologize. But they did a great job in terms of the writing style with the story that they were given. And so I liked this part because the writing jumped around a lot. You had Will, and then you had Professor Onyx, and then you had Rowan, and then you had whatever. It jumped around, like Extus was there. And so it shows the confusion of what's going on. Mm-hmm. Will wakes up, and everybody's screaming, and he runs outside and is just being shunted away, right? Rowan makes a joke to him of
that's exactly what it would feel like if that was happening.
Exactly. Even if you are magical and powerful, you're still being caught unawares. I don't care who you are.
Right.
Right? So you still have that experience of like, what's going on? Something's over here. This person's happening. This is happening to this person, blah, blah, blah. And so like, you're just jumping all over the place with the writing, which is great. Because it's supposed to bring you confusion of like, whoa, that moment just happened, that's crazy. But now we're over here and like Extus is doing this thing, which...
Confusion and overwhelm and this sense of like, what do I do?
Yeah.
I could help with this perhaps if I could figure out how it makes sense to do so, right? Also,
then, I guess then we run into problems very quickly into this one, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So, Ex Machina is a thing, right? Just like the concept of like, the characters need this right now, and there it is.
Right.
Liliana, the twins find each other, first of all. Even though Will at no point says, I'm going to go to the Biblioplex, and Rowan says, I'm going to go find Will at the Biblioplex. Right. He's probably just going to go there. Right. He's probably going to go there, and the teachers will probably go there. That I bought. That made perfect sense. The deans and the professors would probably go to the Biblioplex as a place to make a good last stand. Makes perfect sense. You would want to consolidate to a central location and defend all so that you know what's going on around you.
It's got a lot of space. So like if they want to collect the children there or something.
Right. A bit of home field advantage where the professors would know the ins and outs of the stacks and stuff. Makes perfect sense. That I bought.
They're not really children. They're,
students.
Yeah.
But less experienced mages.
Right.
But when she says, my brother would go there, well, too bad, your brother's looking for you.
Right.
So he's not going to go to the Biblioplex because you don't go to the Biblioplex.
Right. Your brother's not going to say, where would she go? She would go to the Biblioplex because she'd be looking for me, and that's where she would think I would go.
Yeah, it's like the triple blind, right? Especially because, as we talked about with the last story...
process ain't gonna happen.
Right. But especially because, as we talked about with the last story, they were in conflict with one another. Like, it obviously, because as we know with this trope, which doesn't make any sense in this regard... Obviously, Rowan doesn't want Will to die, right? She doesn't want him to, like, get attacked by an Arik or a Mage Hunter and be killed. And it's not like she's not going to care about him in that moment and say, oh my god, I want to go check on my brother. But the fact that Will's got to play, like, 4D chess of, like, okay, well, I need to go find Rowan, and she's probably at Witherbloom campus, but she's probably coming from Witherbloom campus to look for me. But is she going to come to our dorm to look for me, or is she going to come to the Biblioplex to look for me? But if I go to the Biblioplex and she's not going there because she never goes there, then where do I go to find her? Like, it's like, no.
And the thing is, he doesn't know where she's been.
Right.
For weeks and weeks on end.
Well, he can guess because she's been hanging out with her friends so much, but yes, I agree with you. He doesn't know that.
Yeah, he knows she's been hanging out with Witherbloom people.
Right.
But he doesn't really know them And he doesn't know how she's been spending her time. So if she's been spending her time doing things outside of the dorms with her friends, because that makes sense for
Sounds
like
like
what
college to me.
college students do. You know, they don't hang out in the dorms as much when they can go out and do things.
Yeah.
You know, he might not find her. Maybe she's at the swamp where Dina was.
Yeah.
You know,
I will say,
whatever.
personal story gets thrown in here. I will say shout out to my friend Tom from college, because he knew there was a spot where I always spent most of my free time when I was like studying or watching TV or whatever. It wasn't in a room, but I hung out there all the time. It was a communal space, but it was like a small room. And so it got to the point where I hung out there all the time and nobody else did. So I legitimately just called it my office because I spent so much time there. And the times that Tom would call me and be like, hey, I'm walking around campus, are you at your office? So funny. And he would just come hang out. So, like, maybe Rowan has one of those, but, like, that wasn't discussed. But, but yeah, there's definitely situations
the point
like
is,
that.
her brother doesn't know where she's been.
Yeah.
So there'd be no way for him to figure out how to locate her.
Right. But...
other than to check the Witherbloom dorms.
Right. But magically, they find each other in the middle of the campus.
Of course,
and then,
it's convenience.
Right. Well, and it gets worse, because then they, like, get attacked out of well, not out of nowhere. Obviously, there's an attack going on, but they get caught unawares with a specific attack. And they're about to, like, Rowan shoves Will out of the way and then kind of braces for a hit. And then hears a gurgling sound. And for about a half a second, I was like, huh, I guess one of the twins gets hurt here. Nope. Liliana, Professor Onyx shows up.
Right.
Even though she was at the Quandrix dorms, or at least she was with... no, she was teaching a class, which also makes no goddamn sense, because Will was woken up in the middle of the night, even though Rowan wasn't there, and he was surprised by the fact that she wasn't there, but also Professor Onyx was teaching a class.
Maybe
when we cut to her.
Maybe he was taking a nap between classes?
But he said, of course she's not here. So, like, not implying that she wouldn't be there during the day, but that she hasn't been there in a while.
Right.
And that was odd to him that she wouldn't be there. It seemed to me, when I read it, that he was asleep. Maybe he was taking a nap. I definitely took many naps in college. That's definitely a thing, but... I have no idea. I don't know. But again, we talked about the timeline issues with episode 3. This was the one timeline issue I had with episode 4. And it was kind of the only one, but, you know. But anyway, yes, Professor Onyx shows up out of nowhere exactly when the twins need to be saved, because otherwise they'll die. And Liliana needs them. Professor Onyx needs them. And so she saves them, and then, hey, by the way, come with me, we're going this way.
Yeah.
Okay, Ex Machina, I guess. Then we cut to Extus. Sorry. Actually, first of all, no, I lied to you. When Liliana is speaking to the twins, she says to them, well, Extus, the leader of the Auric.
Yeah.
Am I forgetting when Liliana learned about Extus?
I didn't know when Liliana learned about Extus.
It definitely wasn't in episode 3, because we just read it, and it definitely wasn't in episode 4. If it was in episodes 1 and 2, I completely forgot. Right. So feel free to remind me in the comments, but otherwise, how does Liliana know who Extus is? There's not like a book on the Auric in the Biblioplex,
No.
I feel like.
No.
So like she's done like research on them. She like, I know she spied on them in that one scene, but did they mention Extus specifically?
I don't remember.
That would have to be it.
I feel like it would have to be it, but I feel like you're right. I feel like they didn't actually say that.
So again, if that's an Ex Machina, great, another one. Of like, by the way, that's Extus. Or not that, but it's probably Extus. He's the leader of the Auric. Okay, that's another one. Then we go back to tropes again. When you have a villain in your story, I guess... the best way to show that your villain is an asshole is to have a random mook show up and say that they messed up a plan and apologize profusely and have the villain go, no, it's fine, and then murder them in cold blood in front of all of the other minions that are around. Or even higher ups, but still below you. Again, how many times has that happened? A billion? All of them? Like, it's just, it happens all the time. This is not exactly the same thing, but it's damn close, where Extus is in the library.
In Harry Potter, even. If you want to make more parallels to that.
Like I said, that's, again, not as egregious, because they just did the trope in Harry Potter that they did everywhere else. It just happens to be a parallel that can be drawn here, but still. But yeah, you have the moment of Extus in the Biblioplex. We see Taver again, by the way, which is great. I really appreciated the callback to Taver, the named Auric character, the only named Auric besides Extus and arguably at this point Luca. But Extus sees a student whose arm is ruined. One arm messed up, the other arm usable. Silverquill student who shoots a blast of energy at Extus, or an attack at Extus. And Extus was in the middle of congratulating Taver and thanking him for bringing Extus this book that Extus needed. Taver found the book, and Extus says, "I promise you, you will be rewarded for this. Thank you." The spell comes, he pulls Taver in front of the spell, Taver dies. And then Extus kills the student, turns, and walks off. Can you see that happening in a movie or a TV show? Because I sure as hell can. And that's the end of the scene, and it's like, oh, he's the bad guy. We've had 15 different ways that we know that he's the bad guy already. His entire meeting with Luca showed that he was the bad guy. Every action of the Auric and the fact that he's the leader of them shows that he's the bad guy. Liliana says he's the leader of the Auric. He is in charge of this. That shows he's the bad guy. When Extus comes up and talks to Luca after Luca fights with Kasmina, that's what shows he's the bad guy. Do you have to show that that's how bad of a bad guy he is? He summons a blood avatar with a blood ritual. That shows that he's a bad guy. Why do you need to show, it's just... It's but all of those things do a great job of showing you he's the villain, but we need to show you he's a villain in the way that everybody else shows you what villains are.
Right. Yeah.
No?
It's really sad.
No, you didn't. You didn't need to do that. There was a moment where Liliana mentions, or the story mentions that Liliana is surprised that the twins are so excited about going on an adventure, and adventure is in quotes, because Eldraine. Adventure cards. I actually didn't hate it. I didn't hate it. I won't lie to you. But if you watch our streams, you know that Amy hates the puns and I love them. So, anyway, I appreciated it. I noticed it. I wanted to write it down. Okay. Then we talk about... Anybody seen James Bond or other spy movies where a spy gets knocked unconscious, captured, or a good guy in general gets knocked unconscious and captured, and then just given every chance in the world to escape, which they do, and they beat the bad guy because they do that every time. And what's everybody's response to that all the time? Why didn't the villain just kill them? We literally just saw Auric murder someone who did multiple good things for him. Auric even says, this is Taver, he was on multiple missions to the school, right? He was on multiple, he went on multiple missions to the school, and Taver just said to him, thank you for this book, you will be rewarded, and then kills him, right? Again, it's to show that he's a bad guy. But he's not a bad enough guy to make sure that when he transports Professor Onyx away, which is a great move, very smart, and she's gone out of the picture now, and then knocks the twins to the ground, why aren't they dead? Not from being knocked to the ground.
Right.
And maybe...
just from being murdered by the bad guy.
And maybe...
who likes murdering people.
Right.
Clearly.
And there's no reason. It's not like he's gonna... It's not like he needs them for the blood sacrifice, right? If that was the case, it would be well, we have to keep them alive until this blood sacrifice happens so we can use their blood, right? We need sacrificial people, so let's just keep them around. They're conveniently here.
Right.
You don't need that. So just kill them. They tried to stop you multiple times. Now, maybe he's a cocky villain where he doesn't think that... obviously he's willing to just throw these spells at them to knock them away.
Right.
Just kill them. I don't understand what the rationale behind it is. Now, granted, he may be a little busy. He's in the middle of a blood ritual, right? He's got the book, he's got all the spells and scrolls around him and stuff, but he's also got a room full of Auric.
Yeah.
They didn't kill, like Liliana and the twins didn't kill a bunch of them. One of them died from a falling piece of ceiling, we heard about that, but we didn't hear about a ton of other deaths. So where are the rest of the Auric? How difficult would it be for them, under orders of Extus or not, to just walk up and go, oh, there's an unconscious body. Here's a knife into your heart. Here's a death spell for you. But no, they got up. And that's how it ends with them waking up and seeing all the stuff that's going on. Why? Obviously, whether you know the story spotlight cards or not, it's a trope. They're alive, so they're gonna be able to stop him. Liliana's alive and somewhat close to the school, and she says, don't die, I'm on my way back. It's gonna take a while, it's a long walk.
Right.
Okay. So you were just like, I'm gonna kick this can down the road, I'll deal with it later. Okay. Now, I thought it was interesting, you mentioned, again, a timeline, not necessarily a timeline issue, but one that you were talking about where the twins get blown back, and then there's a line in the story, which they use many times, and usually to pretty good effect, delineating either a change in perspective, depending on what character we're focused on, and or a passage of time.
Right.
And in this case, it was a passage of time from the twins getting knocked back to the twins coming to. And, I don't know, you pointed that out, I don't know if you...
Well, I just meant to say, like, I guess the question was just like, okay, like, how long were they out?
Yeah.
And... like you said, why didn't they kill them? Did they think that they were dead? When they were just knocked out? Like, because maybe that's the case. That's why they didn't kill them, and why also, like, they wake up to the blood ritual? Like, I don't...
Yeah, that because it seemed to me, especially with the fact that Rowan wakes up and there's just blood streaming everywhere.
Right.
I thought to myself, I said to myself,
She
I was
knew
like...
it wasn't her blood.
Right, or Will's. But I said to myself, okay, because once you brought it up, at first I was like, wow, that was fast. And then when you brought it up, it was like, oh, okay, they could have been out for who knows how long.
Right.
But again, that's all the more reason why one of the Auric could have walked up and gone, boop, and just popped a knife into their chest.
Right.
Like, sure, it's brutal, but... Well, and that's the other point I want to bring up, so I want you to be able to finish any more thoughts that you have. My last point about this story and in general, like episode 4 and probably going into episode 5, a blood ritual? That seems a little brutal. Like, it just seems like you have this new plane, right, with this school of magic, and it just seems so counterintuitive. I mean, maybe that's the point. Maybe they're trying to... Yeah. A blood ritual where you're calling out a blood avatar? That seems like... ridiculous.
Yeah.
Now, we haven't read episode 5, like this just happens at the end of episode 4. So I'm curious to wait until episode 5 to hear the reasoning behind the blood avatar, right? What is it for? Why is Extus summoning it? What is it going to do? Does it absorb magic, right? Is it just supposed to like... Sure. But I mean, like, is it supposed to like absorb all the magic from the snarl, which... Maybe we'll see that. But, like, is it supposed to, like, take magic from the snarl so that the snarl isn't there anymore, and so that the biblioplex isn't as impactful, or the school doesn't have as much magical prowess, and so Extus feels, I don't know, redeemed in the fact that now there's not all these snooty children walking around thinking that they're the most powerful mages on the plane when Extus and the rest of the Auric exist, and so this is just a way to humble them. But it just seems so over the top and overblown.
And unnecessary. Like, just...
I don't know.
I don't know.
But that's, again, that's my initial reaction to reading this, where, like, the twins wake up and there's just rivulets of blood, and then it becomes, like, a lot of blood. And it's like, this is, like, a lot. It just feels like a lot. Now, granted... I truly kind of hate doing it, but I'm going to anyway, and so I do apologize. But in Harry Potter, you have the return of, like, a mass murderer in Voldemort, right? I mean, he just kills, right? He comes to the school, he's killing students, he's killing teachers, he doesn't care. And so that's kind of a brutal thing as well.
Cedric Diggory.
Yeah, that's not a Robert Pattinson thing. That's just a Cedric Diggory thing for Amy, by the way.
Yeah. I love him.
But anyway, it just like, so I get that, right? That is also brutal. So I'm not trying to like give one a pass and say that the other one, it felt a little out of place to me that it goes from like, here's a magic school and we have 5 colleges and a cool thing, and it's like blood ritual. It just seems like so counter. And again, maybe that's the point. Maybe the point is it's not all sunshine and rainbows around here at this lovely school here on Arcavios. There's also a blood avatar that can be summoned from underneath the school. Yay!
If you stay in school, you'll learn how to do it. So you can be a gigantic asshole too.
Or like you bring them in young and you say, now kids, stay in school, otherwise the blood avatar will come and get you.
There's no such thing.
Yeah. Check under your biblioplex before you go to bed at night and make sure that the blood avatar hasn't come out. So
dumb.
That is going to be the end of this episode.
Yeah.
As I said earlier, please be aware that next week we will be back with episodes 3 and 4 of the side stories, as long as episode 4 comes out, because at the time of recording it has not. But otherwise, we will absolutely have JaAR next week, don't you worry. And we will be reviewing Strixhaven no matter what, don't you worry. But it should be episodes 3 and 4 of the side stories. We will see as long as that goes according to plan. And then the week after, our plan is to review stories 5 and 5. Main story 5, side story 5.
Yeah.
So hopefully that works out that way. We would appreciate if you would stick around and stay tuned for that. Please don't forget, leave all of your thoughts about anything that we talked about. If you feel strongly about one thing and not something else, you can talk about anything that you want that we've discussed. Agree, disagree, a point that you thought should have been brought up by us that we didn't bring up.
Right.
Anything at all, we would love to hear that, because even if we can sit here and talk about problems that we have with the story, but still appreciate good writing, it's just a way for us to join with all of you in showing off our...
#Vorthos Pride.
Keep it going. We appreciate it. Check us out on like our socials and stuff. Links down in the description box below. We have other channels as well. We actually just started the day before this video goes out. Ring that bell. The day before this video comes out, we just started playing through The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time on our channel over at Video Games for All. Again, link down in the description box below. Amy had never seen the game before. So be ready for that. That's not like, throwing shade. That's the whole point of that channel, by the way, if people are unaware. So Amy is experiencing that game for the first time ever. So go check that out. That is up on that channel right now. The logo will be popping up here in the middle of us at some point so that you can click it and subscribe to that channel. We also have Dream Daddy finishing up. We are finishing our Dream Daddy series this Sunday.
Finale.
Oh God, so good. If you haven't seen any of it,
finale.
Yeah. If you haven't seen any of it, you should go watch the whole playlist because it's really good.
Yeah,
but the finale,
really great, actually.
Yes. But if you've been following along, because I know many of our viewers have and have really been enjoying it, which is great to see and hear. But you can. The finale is coming up this Sunday, so definitely stay tuned for that. Thank you all so very much for watching. We really do hope that you enjoyed this episode.
Yeah.
We'll be back next week as promised, but for now, from us here at the Geek for All family of channels, I have been Joe.
And I'm Amy.
And as we always say, in whichever video of ours you watch next, we will see you all next time. Thanks, everybody.